Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Great Expectations. Chapter 6, Depressed and Ashamed. As my apprenticeship with Joe progressed, my depression over it did not stop. My worst fear, unlikely though it was now became the one of Estella looking in a forge window, seen with a black face and hands. How she would laugh at me and despise me. I think I would run away to sea. But I cannot hurt Joe by doting such a contemptible thing. Nor could I disillusion his disbelief that being a blacksmith was a fine thing. Still, I managed not to show any of my unhappiness to Joe, for which I am very glad. When a year passed, I could no longer fight my desire to see Estella and Miss Havisham once more. Joe was very agreeable to me taking a day off, and soon I found myself in front of that familiar gate. It took some time for me to work up the courage to ring, but finally I did so. A woman answered the bell at the gate and introduced herself as one of Miss Havisham's cousins. I'm certain that the woman would have liked to have sent me away, but did not dare do so on her own, so she went asked what to do. Miss Havisham ordered me in, and I found her and everything else about the room unchanged. Well, she said, I hope you don't want anything, for you'll get nothing. No, Miss Havisham, I replied. I only wanted to know that I'm doing well in my apprenticeship, and I am grateful to you for urging it. Well, that's the case, fine, she said. You may come to see me now and then. Come on your birthday. When she saw me looking around, she smiled slyly and said, You're wondering where Estella is, aren't you? Well, ma'am, I sort of was. I was just hoping she was well. She is well and gone abroad. She is being educated as a lady. She is prettier than ever and much admired by all who see her. Do you feel that you have lost her? She broke into a malicious, disagreeable laughter at this question. I don't know how to answer, but I didn't have to. She waved me out of the room and hurried me down the stairs, out of the house, and into the road, her laughter still ringing behind me. Since then I had to walk. It was night by the time I neared home. I could see the house, and the forge was brightly lit. And as I got closer, I saw a crowd of people milling about in the front yard. I started to run, and the crowd parted for me when they saw who I was. A circle of people stood in the kitchen, Joe and the village doctor among them. As I burst into the room, they looked up and moved aside so I could see what they stood around. My sister lay on the floor, not moving, unconscious, and bleeding heavily from her head. Joe put his arm around me and said, Now, old chap, we must be brave. Some villain has crept into this kitchen and laid out Mrs. Joe with a wicked blow. Is she alive? I gasped. The doctor spoke up. Alive, yes. In her right senses, probably not. By now, the police were questioning everybody, but no one had seen the attack. Someone had come up behind her and stood at the stove and dealt her a heavy blow on the back of the head. Though the investigation continued for weeks, the attacker was not found. Joe and I said nothing to one another, but each of us knew that my sister had made many enemies with her short tongue and quick temper. I was not the only person in the village who had received a battering from her strong fist. We knew, but never said, that many people hated her and that any one of them could have dealt her that blow. She was alive, but her recovery was slow. She never did recover power of speech or memory, and her personality was quite changed. She was patient and quiet, asking with her hands only made warm and comfortable by the fire, like an aged cat. Joe was upset by this change in Mrs. Joe, but gradually became conscious of a quiet and pleasantness in his life they had never experienced before. This was enhanced because Biddy came to live with us and take care of us. Biddy was an orphan girl in the village and was distantly related to Mr. Wopsle. She was wonderfully clever. My reading and writing improved very fast under her guidance. As for her cooking, Jane and I never tasted such delicious meals. She was gentle and kind with my sister and kept us all clean and comfortable. For the first time in my life, Joe was able to go freely to the village pub for a glass of beer and a good talk with the other men. I found myself confiding in Biddy, for she was sympathetic, but she also had sensible comments to make. So it was her, not to Joe, that I confided in my dream one day. I want to be a gentleman, Biddy. I said. She looked up from her sewing and said, because of Estella, is that it? Because she wouldn't want you as you are? Miserably, I nodded yes, ashamed for myself and for Estella too. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.